how these three couples saved between $250,000 up to $2 million of unnecessary tax. In this educational episode, which is part of a series on what I call strategic rollouts, I'm going to talk about strategic rollouts from IRAs and 401ks, and I'm going to give you three quick examples of how this doubled people's income or more, but it also saved between $250,000 up to $2 million of unnecessary tax over the life of their accounts. So I'm Doug Andrew. I've been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist now for nearly 5 decades. I started in 1974, helping people optimize assets and minimize taxes, especially at retirement, because a lot of people came to me at retirement. Because at retirement, planning and strategizing is something totally different than maybe what you did for retirement. I wish I could have caught these couples 20, 30, 40 years earlier and they kicked themselves, okay? But nonetheless, I was helping them avoid unnecessary tax on their tax-deferred IRAs and 401ks because, lo and behold, if they were savers, they were not in a lower tax bracket like they were always told they would be. They were in as higher tax bracket as ever because they had been killing their tax deductions, maybe deferring tax to some future perceived unknown advantage, even though they could see that taxes would likely be higher in the future because of irresponsible government spending and the printing of money. Taxes go up. So they got rid of some of their tax deductions through the years, and taxes went up, and now they're paying as much or more in tax than they ever paid when they were working. This used to be a shocker to a lot of people. Not anymore. More and more people are waking up, and that's why many smart people might roll over to Roths and get the taxes over and done with sooner than later. But for some reason, as of the recording of this episode, the president, Joe Biden, wants to do away with rollovers from IRAs to Roths for some reason. I don't understand this because it triggers tax revenue, which is why they passed it in 1997 in the first place. But nonetheless, I can't ever figure out what their thinking is on some of these things. But I've never owned an IRA or 401k and never will, but I've never owned a Roth IRA or 401k, and I never will, because my favorite vehicle, which I call the LASERFund, you'll understand what that is in a moment, knocks the socks off of any Roth. It has 6 benefits, not just the 2 benefits that Roths have. So let me go through and explain this, and then at the end of this episode, I want to gift you a copy of a 300-page book that's been flying off of our warehouse shelves. You don't have to pay $20 for it on Amazon and shipping on top of that. I'll pay for the book and fire out a copy to you. So stay with me to the end. But in the book and in other episodes that I have on this channel, just so that we are on the same page or starting off at the same point, I want to sort of explain these 4 buckets that a lot of retirees may draw from at retirement, okay? So at retirement, a lot of people would come to me for strategies to maximize their retirement income and minimize tax. Now, the sad thing is most people that came to me were way too top heavy in this purple bucket, which is yet to be taxed, IRAs, 401ks, and the like, invested where? In the market. And people begin to realize the stock market is not stable enough to be able to give you predictable income. That's why broker-dealers only want their advisors to illustrate 4% being paid out of your IRAs or 401ks if they're invested in the market, which is pretty pathetic. $1 million, they only want you pulling out $40,000 a year. You pay tax of even 25% on that, you're netting $30,000, 3%. That's unacceptable to me. I think $1 million nest egg ought to generate $80,000 to $100,000 a year of tax-free income. The LASERFund does that, okay? So this is where a lot of people have money. Others might own real estate and they're relying on rental income. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do. Only about 30% should you rely on tenants being in those properties, in my opinion. A lot of real estate landlords are sick and tired of being landlords, and the headaches of taking out the trash and fixing toilets, evicting tenants. Even if you hire property managers, sometimes they cost a lot, or they even embezzle some of your money. You have people who like guarantees with Social Security, or maybe their school teacher pension or whatever. That's called the orange bucket. My favorite one is the green bucket, okay? It's a LASERFund. Now, in the green bucket are tax-free vehicles. You have Roths, but I've never owned one. You'll see why. Some municipal bonds might still be considered, but most of the time people go, no, municipalities are going bankrupt, they're low yielding, they're not near as popular as they used to be. Here I have the MFTA insurance, but I put in parentheses a LASERFund. See, that's a max funded tax advantage insurance contract, but it must be structured correctly and funded properly, and it should be an IUL contract. If you structure it correctly, and you fund it properly, it will be deemed a LASERFund, and LASER is an acronym that stands for Liquid Asset Safely Earning Returns, and this is where I've averaged between 8 to 10%. Tax-free, every million can generate 80 to 100,000 a year of tax-free income for as long as you live, without depleting the $1 million nest egg, okay? So when people learn this, they want to get their money out of the purple bucket, the IRAs or 401ks. You don't do a rollover. That's not smart. Rolling money over from a 401k into an IRA, continuing to defer, delay, postpone, procrastinate paying tax to what? Some future perceived unknown advantage. You know taxes will likely be higher in the future because of irresponsible government spending and the printing of money. And so you don't want to go from the frying pan to the fire and follow the advisors that say, oh, defer till you're age 72. And then if you don't need the money, just take out RMDs, required minimum distributions, and you'll save tax. Well, yeah, in each given year, but when you add up all the tax you pay, people are shocked that a $500,000 IRA or 401k, by following that advice out to your life expectancy and your spouses, people are shocked when I show them they're going to pay about $980,000 in tax. They go, it's only worth $500,000 right now. Yeah, but if you defer to age 72 and then it doubles to $1 million, and then you keep taking RMDs, you're going to pay about $1 million of unnecessary tax. I go, why don't you just get it all out and get the taxes over and done with? You could only pay $150,000 in tax instead of $1 million, and then convert to tax-free from that point forward. So again, I recommend no more than 30% be left in that bucket when you retire. I recommend that no more than 30% of your income be dependent upon tenants being in those rental properties, depending upon your risk tolerance, somewhere between 0 and maybe up to 80% of your income could be guaranteed. But I recommend that 40 to 60% of your income come out of the tax-free bucket, out of the LASERFund, because it'll have the highest rate of return. It's tax-free. You can generate 8 to 10% payouts. In some years, you can make 25%, even 61%, like many people did with LASERfunds in 2020 to 2021, okay? Now, folks, here's the strategy, and then I'm going to summarize it here. The first step is to strategically roll the money out, not over, roll it out, getting the taxes over and done with at today's lower rates. Your current tax bracket is likely the lowest bracket you will ever be in. Get the taxes over and done with sooner than later. Now, the second part of the strategy is to reposition the net after-tax money into tax-free vehicles. I prefer the LASERFund because it's not only tax-free, and I can use indexing. I get to participate when the market goes up and not lose when it goes down. But at the end of the day, when I finally die, it blossoms. If I died right now, I'm 70. If I were killed in an accident tomorrow, every million I would have in a LASERFund would double to 2 million and transfer tax-free to my heirs. People say, whoa, how much does that cost? Well, nothing's free, but it doesn't cost me anything. It's being paid for with a minuscule portion of money that would otherwise go out the window in unnecessary tax. if I kept my money in that purple bucket in IRAs and 401ks. So you want to get it into something that will blossom when you die, and that reimburses you way more than the tax you paid. The third strategy, sometimes we employ, you don't need to, but there's examples and videos in here where I show you how we offset some of the tax liability, sometimes all of it, by resurrecting new tax deductions on their rental properties, or even selling their home and buying two retirement condos. And by resurrecting tax deductions, they were able to get the money out of their IRAs and 401ks with no tax consequence. So here's what we did. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples. Years ago, I had a husband and wife, both school teachers, come to me, and they had about $250,000 in their 403Bs, 401ks, and tax sheltered annuities, and they didn't need the money, okay? But they realized that when they retired, their defined benefit pension was going to be about 60% of what they had been earning the last 5 years. And they thought, oh, we better save into a side fund. And that's where they ended up with this $250,000, which back then, 20 years ago, was a lot of money. And what did their advisor tell them to do? Oh, if you don't need the money, you're 59 and a half. You're not going to pay 10%. But why? Why would you keep deferring? If they deferred that $250,000, I gave them the benefit. What if it doubled to $500,000 by age 70 and a half, which is the age they had to start taking RMDs? And what if you took RMDs? I showed them, even in their current tax bracket, if they did that out to the husband's life expectancy and then the wife's life expectancy, they would have paid more than $250,000 in tax. And I said, what if tax rates go up? It's even more than that. They were shocked. They had never done the math. And I said, would you agree we ought to get that out and the taxes over and done with sooner than later? Yeah, but I said, you will like this, you will see. You know, I felt like Sam I am and green eggs and ham. You will like this, you will see. Well, we don't want to pay the tax. I said, listen, if we pulled out $60,000 a year for 5 years, okay, that's $300,000 because you're going to keep earning interest on this. Let's say $300,000. So you pull out $60,000, and we can do this and keep you in the current tax bracket, and you'll only pay $12,500 in tax. Okay, so they paid $12,500 in tax. Ugh. Now their advisor goes, "Who's this guy telling you to pull it out? He just made you pay $12,500 in additional tax." I said, "You show me why it's wise to keep deferring that." So they paid $12,500 in tax, okay? And they did that in 5 years. That's $60,000 they paid in tax. And we got $300,000 out. The taxes are all over and done with now. The net after tax went into their laser funds, okay? Now, the laser funds, they also grew at an average rate of return between 8 to 10%, very conservatively. And their laser funds are tax-free now. And so they have enough money in the laser funds that they can pull out of those accounts about $48,000 a year tax-free. And they thought at the best, out of these, they would net maybe $24,000 a year after tax with their advisor. Yeah, we doubled their net spendable income, and they came in after they got it all out tax-free, and they go, "Well, Mr. Andrew, we want to take money out of our laser fund and pay off the mortgages on our house and our property here," because they decided they wanted to be able to create some new tax deductions. That was just their choice. They read some of my books. And I said, "Well, yeah, you can do that." They said, "Is that what you would do?" And I said, "Well, no, because you're earning twice as much as you're making just on that. You're making $32,000 a year in interest. The money that you would use to pay off the mortgage, you would be giving up $36,000 a year of tax-free, and you're only paying about half that in net after tax interest. You would be missing out. So yeah, you would be giving up, a rate of return that's pretty incredible." And they go, "Oh." So they continued to keep those tax deductions, and so they ended up with a far greater money. What's the next example? We had a husband and wife. They were both physicians, and they came to us. They had just had their blinders on, helping their patients for years, socking away the maximum amount into their SEPs and their tax-deferred accounts due to what the advice was that they were given by their financial advisors and planners. And they ended up with $4.6 million, okay? Now, that's pretty good. Savers end up between husbands and wives sometimes today with about $5 million. And they came to me at retirement and they go, Doug, we're in the highest tax bracket. I go, yep, and you will never be in a lower one in my estimation. But I would recommend we still get the taxes over and done with sooner than later rather than compounding and deferring. And they were very savvy and they go, yeah, in fact, we're embarrassed that we have $4.6 million and yet to be taxed money in these accounts. I said, well, I wish I could have, prevented this years ago, but I can't save you all the tax on these. But I looked at it and I said, I think I can save you about 1.2 million. Would you like to save 1.2 million? And they go, absolutely. Now, their advisor said, they can afford to pay 2.6 million in tax, because I showed them they would pay 2.6 million in tax over, I think it was the next 20 years on 4.6 million, even if they took out those RMDs. And the advisor goes, well, so he was scared to death they were going to move money away from him. And he goes, well, they can afford to pay 2.6 million in tax. I go, well, why don't you ask them if they want to pay that? I said, I can't save them 2.6, but I could save them 1.2 million. Well, they can afford it. I go, Jim and Mary, what would you like to do? They, Doug, we'd like to save 1.2 million, which we did. That went into an IUL LASERFund, which at an 8% payout is generating $100,000 a year of tax-free cash flow they don't need, and so they use it for what I call their family bank. This is funding college educations, missionary service, humanitarian missions for their kids and grandkids into perpetuity. Just the interest off of that 1.2 million we saved in tax. So they were thrilled. I couldn't save them 2.6, but I saved them 1.2. We had a couple in California. Okay, they came to us. They had $600,000 in yet to be taxed IRAs or 401ks. Very common for those in the Bay Area who save money. And they had $600,000. When they saw the rollout, I said, it's going to hurt for 5 years. You're going to pay $200,000 in tax. These were actually my son's clients. And I said, but you're going to be glad you did this. Okay, so you'll pull out this money because they said, we don't want to convert just 40 to 60%. We want 100% of our income to be tax-free. We have paid taxes our entire life, and now we're going to give the IRS $2 million. If they don't manage that, well, that's their problem. But we're going to give them $2 million sooner than later. We want to be in a 0% tax bracket forever after. I said, okay, I know how to do that. We basically got the $6 million out over the next 5 years. They paid $2 million in taxes. They only netted $4 million. Now, they're pretty sharp. They were still working and so forth, but the taxes are all done now. They were in the highest bracket anyway. They weren't going to be in a lower one. But now they have a net of $4 million in the tax-free bucket, the green bucket. Now, that $4 million, they actually, because of rebalancing and using the indexing strategies we teach in the book, they doubled their money in the next 7.5 years or so, 7.2, 7.5 years. So the 4 million grew to 8 million in their indexed universal life accounts, their laser funds. Yeah, it was incredible. So folks, you can do this. They were averaging in that 9 to 10% range, like many of our clients do. So what ended up happening? They had $8 million and they did retire. They're in a 0% tax bracket. That $8 million, they know they could pull out $600, $650, $700, even a 10% payout. $800,000 using alternate loan distributions that are tax-free, where you can get 10% payouts without depleting principal, that could generate $800,000 a year in a 0% tax bracket. They don't need that. In fact, they only need about $300,000, and that's if they're living high on the hog. So they pull out $300,000, they're making $800,000, 10% on that. They're making $500,000 more than they need to live on, and it's all tax-free. They were in the highest tax bracket, and in 5 years, we got them in a 0% tax bracket. They wanted to do that, so we accommodated their request. But I'd recommend at a minimum you check out getting 40 to 60% of your income off of your 1040 tax return at retirement. So in order to do that, I want to gift you a copy of this book, The LASERFund. You claim your free copy. You don't have to pay $20 on Amazon for this. You simply go to LASERFund, LASERfund.com, or click on the link below, and you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I require a little bit of skin in the game, and I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I will pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you. It's 300 pages, 2 books in one. This is the left brain side with all the charts and graphs. This is the right brain side with all the stories and examples in it, 62 of them. And if you want to use both your left brain and right brain, read both of these. But you'll gain insights into opportunities that you never knew existed before. When you're claiming your free copy, there's options there also to listen and learn, watch and learn. Some of my other books are there, and you can get those at special claim prices and so forth that are discounted to you. But we teach free educational webinars on a regular basis. Check those out. And you can even schedule a no-obligation appointment to talk to an IUL specialist on how you can use these strategies like I talked about in this episode. Check out the other episodes in this playlist. This is dynamic. You need to understand strategic rollouts and avoid paying taxes of $250,000, $1 million, even $2 million or more during the rest of your life unnecessarily.